Hi everyone, let's continue our page layout using the Gridlex CSS library, which allows us to arrange our cards based on a grid system and divide up our page. So far we've completed the top half of our grid system where we have 50% and 50% in these two 6-column spaces and then two more 6-column spaces within a column that's been converted into a grid. You can see that we have a second grid to build, but we also are going to be using a slightly modified container. If I inspect this, I'll show you how this particular container, all right, has a slightly different width. All right, it has a max width of 980 pixels, where the container above it has a slightly larger width. And so we want to change that, as well as change this border at the top so we can create this nice little pink border to separate our two main areas. Okay, so you can see we've made a container class, but we're also going to add a second container lower class, so to our style.css, before we get into building our additional grid with our two additional columns. Okay, so first let's make a small adjustment to our style.css and create a second container class. We're going to call it container dash lower, and inside of that we're just going to change the max width to only 98 rem, so it's only 980 pixels wide, and we'll keep the we'll change the margin as well so that the top is 4 rem or 40 pixels. The left and right are still 0, but the bottom is still, I'm sorry, the left and right are auto and the bottom is 0. All right, and then finally we'll add that border at the top, and we'll make it 3 pixels solid, and we're going to make it using our variable, we'll make it our primary color. Okay, and so with that created, back in our HTML, and again, most of these two tutorials are in the HTML because we are using a CSS library with all our classes already created. So we have our upper container, okay, with our upper grid, and we have all these extra cards, but we're going to move these into a lower container. So we're going to create a second container. We're going to call it dot container, dot container, and then dot container lower. All right, my Emmet didn't work. Dot container lower. Getting a Emmet sad face here, so we'll just say dot container div.container, and then we'll add our second class container lower, and then we'll use all these cards that were remaining. In fact, we don't need the top two anymore. All right, because remember, we have all these cards that are just hovering here within the top container, so we're going to cut them. We're going to put them in the bottom, but first we're going to make our grid. All right, so we have our grid, and then we're going to have our column that we're going to have take up 3/4 of the space. Okay, so we have our grid and we have our column, so we're going to paste those in there, and we're going to collapse this so you guys can make sense of this. So we'll collapse these down. All right, and since these cards are not meant to be secondary cards, they're meant to be just the main cards. All right, and then with the occasional feature hero card, so we're going to make this main, and these all main as well, and every 5th one will make a feature hero card. So we'll say main, and then this one, feature hero, main, main, second to last one, and feature hero. Okay, so now we have a container lower with a grid inside of it, just like a container up top has a grid inside of it. All right, that grid inside of it has two columns that are 50% each by column 6, column 6. This one is going to also have a dot col -4. All right, we don't have anything to put in there yet. And inside of that column, we just have all our main and feature hero cards. So let's have a look at how that looks. All right. So you can see we've successfully added all our cards, and look, they take up the amount of space that they're supposed to take, which is 2/3 of the column. We have our nice border up top here, okay? And it takes up the column overall. The width of this lower container takes up slightly less space. And right now we just have our empty space here on the right. And these images that are here on the right are actually simply just a card with the card media feature type with only a media inside, no card body. And so I've made a bunch of those, and I'm just going to copy and paste them, and I'll attach a link to them so that you can grab them all. So you can see, again, they're just a whole bunch of card dash feature divs, and inside is only the card media. Notice there's no card body. All right, so that way you just get this nice card that takes up, that just has the image. So if we copy these and we put them in our right column, so if you want to make them, you can just use card feature. Actually, I'll just make one. So you would make a div.card dash feature. All right, and inside of there we'd have a card dot card dash media, and then we'd have an image. All right, so you can see I want to double check my syntax, just an image with the card dash image syntax, and then we'll give a source. So it would be an image dot card dash image, all right, with one of our images like the textures, right? And so that's all it is, all right, is a card feature with a card media box, no card body box. All right, so I'm going to replace this one now that I've written it because I have all of those created. We'll paste them all in there, and we'll collapse them down so you can see them all and see the nesting of the structure here. All right, so we have a whole bunch of them in our 4 columns. So now that lower container has a grid that has a column that takes up 8 columns. So that means it takes up 3/4 of the space, and then a column that takes up 4 columns or a quarter of the space. And then we have a whole bunch of cards in there that just have the image. And if we save that and have a look, you can see that our version now matches the final one. Okay. And so now we've done our first stage of page layout using Gridlex. The thing that all that remains is to add responsiveness. So if we inspect this right now and we say switch it to the mobile view, you can see it's quite a disaster in the mobile view. Whereas the final version, when we switch it to the mobile view, you can see it's reduced down to where every feature is now a feature hero, and every card is a main card with the slug removed. So it's still slightly different. So we have to find a way to respond to the change in the width of the document and then change the layout of our cards and even some of the attributes of our cards. And we'll do that in our final video for our problem.